At 4ZZZ, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we broadcast. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging of the Turrbal and Jagera people. We acknowledge that their sovereignty over this land was never ceded.
And we stand in solidarity with them.
You're listening to Tranzmission on 4ZZZ, amplifying the trans and gender non-conforming voices of Brisbane and beyond.
Hello, good morning, Meanjin. You're listening to Tranzmission on 4ZZZ. My name is Ez, and I use he, him pronouns.
And I'm Haydi, and I use she, her pronouns.
For this next hour of Trans Power on 4ZZZ, we play exclusively music by trans and gender diverse artists. So if you do send in a song request, unless that artist has identified in that category when they have submitted music to the station, I tend to not play it. However, don't worry, there'll be other shows that catch up and will give your track a spin. But yeah, that's what Tranzmission is all about. Trying to think of a segue into getting you to talk. Heidi, how you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You been up to much lately? How's life?
Yeah, good. Busy as hell. Running a business, being in community.
Yep. Yeah. Taking all of our stimulant medication to get us to get here
Just
by
to
9 a.m.
Get by. Yeah.
or that, just to be alert, present. Today's episode of Tranzmission will be talking about a few random things. Nothing too heavy, really. We're gonna have a fun time trying to lighten the load of doom scrolling equivalent, radio equivalent. I don't know. Trying to break up your activism a little bit this morning with some light trans fun. I've got a few things that I want to talk about, but before we get into all of that, there are some community events that are happening this week that you should absolutely go to. So, this Friday, the 28th of March at 6:30 at the Cave Inn in Wollongabba is Loud, Heavy and Angry, a metal fundraiser for trans healthcare. This is in response to the banning of gender-affirming care for trans youth in Queensland by the LNP member Tim Nichols. Four of Meanjin's heaviest and transgenderist metal bands have come together to raise funds for Project 491. So come along to the Cave Inn and to see Aiden Knight and the Revenants, Apollo, Where DJ and Fox, and Hell's Horizon. They will all be together to blow your mind and play angry music for a good cause. So, the tickets will be all donated to Project 491, which is a project run by AusPath, which is the Australian Board of Healthcare Professionals specialised in trans healthcare. To help the 491 children stuck in limbo by Tim Nichols and the LNP. AusPath will use funds raised in collaboration with care providers in Queensland and across Australia to establish multidisciplinary pathways to ensure affected young people receive timely and evidence-based care. You can also support the Project 491 directly if you can't make it to the event at the Cave Inn this Friday by heading to auspath.org.au/project 491. It should be on their main page of the website as well, so you can click there. Or alternatively, you can just pay a $15 ticket at the door, $10 tickets at the door, $10 tickets for low-wage income if you need. Loud, Heavy and Angry at the Cave Inn this Friday, 6:30 p.m, as well as other community events that are happening this week. On Sunday, the 30th? Yes, the 30th of March, which is at the Sportsman Hotel, is the Trans Community Awards. Take a moment to recognise all the amazing work occurring within our trans, gender diverse and non-binary communities across Queensland. This is an opportunity for you to celebrate and witness the incredible work of support workers, influencers, personalities, community activists, all of that. There'll be a whole bunch of us there, and quite a few really wonderful people who've been nominated. Tranzmission has been nominated. yours truly has been nominated. Really, the only things that matter. No, okay. There's quite a few of us, and I went to look at the list of who the nominees are, but I could not find it. So my apologies. But yeah, check it out. Sportsman Hotel this Sunday, 3 p.m. Will be the Trans Community Awards. Yeah, I believe tickets are only about like $20. So yeah, go into a good cause, and then in the future. Not too far into the future, but in May, Friday 9th from 6 p.m, if you are a Goldie living on the Goldie, or if you want to go for a bit of a drive, which I'll be doing a carpool with a bunch of friends down to Vinnie's Dive for 491 Fest, which is punk rock, laughter, and making a difference. Again, raising money for Project 491. Is a 491 Fest, which this charity gig is all about raising funds for a vital initiative helping trans kids and teens access life-saving treatment such as puberty blockers and HRT, and all the money raised will again go into OzPath. There'll be Permanent Revolution, Queerbait, Flanger Panties, Lucas Chiovaski, and emceed by Comic Relief, the wonderful and always hilarious Selma Soul. I'm almost so close to doing a Selma scream then, and I didn't. No, I can't do it. It's terrible. So May 9th, chuck that in your calendar. Vinnie's Dive, $18 tickets or $23 tickets on the door. I'll be there. So yeah, those are all the events coming up. Check it all out. Amplifying the voices of the trans and gender non-conforming community of Meanjin, Brisbane and beyond.
Transmission on 4ZZZ brings you the latest in trans community news, music and events.
Every Tuesday from 9am till 10am.
Join our team of hosts for an hour of celebrating the unique perspectives of the trans community.
Transmission, Tuesday mornings from 9am till 10am on 4ZZZ. You're listening to Transmission on 4ZZZ. My name is Ez. I use he, him, her pronouns because apologies. He, him, hers, because I don't believe men should own anything.
And I am Heidi, and I use she, her pronouns.
I caught you off guard.
You did.
I wish I executed it better. That's fine. I'll do it again another Tuesday morning. Listen.
Yeah. Another host. Catch him off guard.
Yeah. That's it. You're listening to Transmission, all about amplifying the voices of the trans and gender diverse community here in Meanjin and beyond. Heidi and I chilling out in the studio today. It's Trans Day of Visibility coming up, actually, as well, which is the 31st of March, which will be Monday next week. And which is an awkward time for Transmission because we're like the day after, which is April Fool's, with a Tuesday. But we'll be visible now and every hour on Tuesday morning for as long as we can. So
yeah.
Speaking of visibility, I wanted to chat about. I had like a situation recently, Heidi. It wasn't like it was definitely a trans experience situation. I'll describe what happened. So, for trans people listening, you may relate. For non-trans folk, enjoy the tale of living two lives. But I used to be part of a group of like queer women, lesbian women. We used to go out and drink and party and stuff many years ago now. I looked very different. I sounded very different. And yeah, we go clubbing and drinking and partying. I'm too old for that now. I'm tired. I'm in bed. Well and truly.
I hear you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, I lost touch with a couple of people there. Continued living my life for a few years here and there. And then started my transition, went through a significant portion of my transition, and just recently I went to an event where I ran into one of those women, and they did not recognize me, did not clock me, did not know who I was, anything. Had conversation with them, was kind of waiting for the penny to drop, waiting for that moment of them to be like, oh, you're blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, I am. Just Harrier. Check it out. But they didn't. It didn't drop. Nothing. It didn't sort of click. And we were kind of like a sort of a work function thing. So, and there was like a moment where people were sharing their story, a bit about their life and stuff. And this person shared their story, and it was totally not the story I know about them. Like it was totally made up. I believe, or the story I knew was made up. I don't know. Either way, I was definitely like, right, cool, you're telling people different things in different spaces. So that was really weird. But I guess, have you ever had anything like that where you're like, people knew you as the way you were before, and then you run into them and they're like, maybe don't recognize you, or they recognize you and they're like, what the heck? Whoa.
Well, I guess my experience is a little bit different because, I grew up in the country. And I was, I make that joke of like, I was the only gay in the village sort of thing. So everybody knew me as like the gay.
Yeah.
There were obviously many queer people there, but not everyone was out. Not everyone was comfortable being, visible. But it's not that I was comfortable, but I was like, I'm gonna anyway.
It's who I am.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
Like, just cop it.
Yeah.
So like where I'm from, people who knew me prior to my transition, when I came to the city in 2014, which is 11 years ago now, as soon as I got here, well, not as soon as, but pretty much as soon as I got here, I was actually part of like a docuseries on ABC called Moment of Truth.
Oh my goodness.
And so my episode in this docuseries was about me going back to my hometown and coming out to my family as trans and da-da-da-da-da. It was terrible, and ABC really screwed me over, but that's another story.
Oh my goodness.
But so basically it's a bit different for me because I have just been so visible the whole time. Like, everybody who knew me before knew me as I transitioned. And I think a lot of people from my hometown paid close attention to me when I came to the city.
Right, so they were witnessing you through your transition.
There's, for me, I don't get that experience of like, oh, these people knew me before and then don't recognize me now. They've seen me change this whole time.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, there's definitely a large portion of people I know who've witnessed me through my transition. Pretty much everyone here at 4ZZZ has known me through all my iterations.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you have like, this is very telling of like all trans people have different experiences of transition and coming out and spaces like that.
I also think that there's this element of, like passing culture comes into it as well. So for those who don't know what passing is and passing culture is kind of stems from, older generations who had to basically pass as cisgender in order to maintain their safety and access to different things.
Kind of an assimilation.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't pass, there were certain disadvantages to that and da-da-da-da-da. So I am a non-passing trans woman. Fine with that. I don't need to... I don't need people to think that I'm cisgender. I'm very proud of being transgender.
Yeah.
But what that comes with is that there's no hiding. There's no like, even people who they might take a second to double take if they see me, if they haven't seen me for years and they weren't following or whatever. But most people look at me and they go, oh yeah, that's such and such from Warwick.
Hey, are you from Warwick? You're just like out, you see someone like staring at you and you're like, oh no. And they come to you like, hey, were you blah, blah, blah from Warwick? And you're like, oh, okay, it's just this. Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, well, because I wasn't exactly low profile in Warwick. Like, I was the only quote unquote male like hairdresser in the whole town, and like basically Warwick's economy is hairdressers and butchers, and so so everybody knew me as like the only male hairdresser, and so
the two genders.
I have had people since I moved to the city. I have had people who were like, "Oh, you cut my hair when I was like 14, and I thought you were so cool because you didn't care and da 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 da, like you were so queer," and I was just like, yeah. And then I also had people walking past yelling slurs, and like I was getting followed home from work. Like, there's pluses and minuses to this.
Sounds like two extremes of like, you're amazing, you're so brave, and then you're like, we hate you. Like kind of two extremes.
It's this double-edged sword because I think one, I think it helped me to develop a thick skin. Kind of growing up in that environment and being very unapologetically queer, basically from the time I was like 12, 13. But then, it's so interesting to have the the very, very few times where people who have like recognized me from Warwick who've also moved to Meanjin.
I fled as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, it pretty much is that. Yeah. And half the time they end up being queer and they've come out when they've moved to the city, kind of like I did with being trans. Like I didn't feel safe enough in my hometown to come out because the only other trans person I knew from my hometown was like the town joke. And, you know, she was treated so horribly.
Oh.
And I just, that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
You know, and then I had my own family being like, I talked to a psychologist on your behalf and they just said that you're gay and confused. And I was like, oh, I was 14.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
So I did actually come out when I was 14 as a trans woman, and I very swiftly got put back in the closet.
Yeah. It's wild, really. You know, there's so many trans and queer people who live in rural towns and small communities outside of major cities all around the country. And you know, small towns breed different dynamics and different cultures, I suppose.
It is a completely different world.
Yeah.
It really is. And that's why when I came to the city, it felt like I had this special insight that I think not a lot of city dwellers have when it comes to things like transphobia and bigotry, because I see the earliest signs of it. And so I felt like when I came to the city, I was clocking all of these people that were a potential threat. And everyone else around me just seemed to be so blasé about it. And I'm like, no, like, look out for this one.
Yeah, pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because like in the reverse of that, I have also like one of the Transmission co-hosts, born and raised in Fitzroy, Melbourne, in the 90s and noughties. And then early 20s moved to far north Queensland, an hour north of Cairns, and had the shock of their life going from what would have been like, I don't know, the pretentious class of Melburnian elite academic berets and coffee to you know, thongs and 4X beers and you don't get anywhere without a ute.
Yeah.
And that was a real shock, a culture shock also in terms of language. Language would have been a big one, but also just that people have very different lifestyles around this country. This is a huge piece of land that we're on.
Oh, yeah.
We're
a whole ass continent.
We really are. And everyone has a array of experiences moving from different spaces into other spaces. And some spaces are more cliquey and other spaces are more accepting, and you have all these different aspects to culture and communities.
I even had, and I've talked about this with my partner, I was like, last time that I went back to my hometown, which is really, it's only like 2.5, 3 hours away.
Which is a short drive.
It is a short drive.
Really.
You go through the Great Dividing Range, and that's really what kind of like separates everything. But accent.
Yeah.
Warwick accent. Very different to a Meanjin accent.
Yeah,
I will tell
totally.
you that. And I only noticed that it was such a big thing, and how much my accent has changed since I've been here for 11 years compared to when I go back and I'm having conversations with my sisters. I'm like,
you're like,
oh my
whoa.
God, I feel like I'm on an episode of Kath and Kim. Like, it's nuts. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And I
it's
love
great.
when that little bit of country twang comes out in me, like the Warwick country twang.
Yeah.
I embrace it, but I have noticed it automatically has shifted over the years since I've been here.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
your accent changes. My mum's from Barcaldine, which is central Queensland towards Longreach. And every now and then she whips out a fair dinkum in it. And I'm like, whoa. All right, country girl. I'm like, whoa, wasn't expecting that. Also, I've been overseas, and I don't know, I'm one of those Australian travellers, like when I go overseas, I don't want to see other Aussies. I leave the country for a reason. And when I was in Canada, which is just basically a second place for Australians who like snow, there were Aussies everywhere. And I remember walking along like Lake Louise, which is a beautiful part of like the Rocky Mountains the drive out to Rocky Mountains. And anyway, it's beautiful. And you do this kind of like boardwalk around Lake Louise, and I could see this couple walking towards us, and I was like, they look Australian. And then I could hear their accent, and I was like, oh, they're from Melbourne. I know that accent. And I was like, quickly, don't engage. We'll I don't want to talk to people from Melbourne.
Giving a bit of prudent true.
Yeah. And most people are like, all Aussies are blah. And I'm like, no. There is a big place with lots of different accents. Like, I can tell the difference between someone from Brisbane, from Sydney, from Melbourne, all just based off of the way that they talk.
Yeah.
And they're all subtle things.
Yes.
Whereas when I was in Canada, everyone was just like, you sound English. And I'm like, well, please don't ever do that.
But that's like, I feel like a lot of people overseas they often confuse like New Zealand accent and Aussie accent. And to us, it's so obvious that it's different, but to elsewhere, it's like, oh. But then people who are from, United States of America and Canada, often we won't notice it until there's a key word that's used. But over there, it's like, they know.
Oh, they know.
They know.
They for sure know. It's a bit like trans voices sometimes. I'm like, is that a trans guy or a trans femme? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Who cares?
Peter Sterling, the only man in the world who's given birth to a child.
Someone might say, oh, you're a bit of a queer. And they'd be right.
My name is Iris, and you're listening to Transmission on 4ZZZ. Subscribe or donate to keep community radio alive.
That's right. You should subscribe and donate to 4ZZZ. Keep community radio alive. Keep Transmission on air. And listen to more Tash Saltana, because that was really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Ez, he, him pronouns.
And I'm Heidi, she, her.
Heidi was just telling me that Tash Saltana actually has a not-for-profit foundation called the I Am Me Foundation that raises money. What is it? We are a non-for-profit based in Australia, founded by Tash Saltana, Jimmy Saltana, and Mark Rice, providing support and monetary grants for our LGBTQIA+, trans and non-binary community in their transitions to become unapologetically themselves. How cute.
Yeah.
You should check that out. It's shoutforgood.com, and you can donate directly to them. And that song that Tash's new song there was Hold On, which is about, what was it about?
So I read somewhere that it was basically a song about her, or them supporting their partner who is currently going through cancer treatment. And I heard about that through my line of work. I'm a wig stylist and I work with people who are going through treatment. Majority of my clients are going through treatment. So I heard it through, that kind of space. It's beautiful when you really sit and listen to it. It's like made me emotional the first time I ever heard it, because obviously I've got that connection in my everyday life to people going through treatment. I thought it was really special.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Give that a whirl again if you want to. Tash Saltana, Hold On. Well, something that I wanted to mention before the end of the episode was that rest is resistance. It's good to have nice, if you're a regular listener of Transmission, you'll know that we cover off on some heavy topics sometimes. We might talk about whether we're interviewing people or touching base on keeping our fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the community and what's affecting us politically, socially, globally, all those sorts of things. And it's nice to have episodes like this where we kind of just hang out in the space and have a yarn.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. And special thanks to Natalia for messaging in and enjoying us just chatting about our experiences as trans people. It's tricky for us because we live trans all the time. We're trans all the time. And I guess like the circles that I revolve in and I live in and I work in and I play in are all trans and queer spaces, really.
Yeah.
I don't really interact with cis hetero people very often. Cis hetero neurotypical people often.
Yeah.
More
I was going to
specifically.
say I'd be like the only person is my partner, but he's not neurotypical. So
you're like, wait, I rule that out.
No, rule that out. But yeah, same. It's a 24/7 thing.
Yeah. And it's hard. I always find it, like recently, so I'm now no longer on social media. Personally, I don't have any Meta on my phone. I have removed it. I still access it. It's just on my computer. And I can like choose to log in and I can just walk away from my computer and I don't have to have the sort of bombardment of doom scrolling and just like really downward heavy, depressing algorithm trajectories.
Yeah.
And when you work and live as a trans person in the trans community, like Haydi and I do, working with vulnerable people as support workers in whatever way, it can be really heavy to spend your downtime just flipping open your phone and then you just hear all this stuff about Trump or about Musk or about these terrible people doing all these terrible things. And a lot of it can be sensationalized, but then other parts of you that's in the fight, flight, freeze is like, is it sensationalized or is it true? Like, is it real that this is happening? And that can be really spooky.
There's times where, you tell yourself not to, overreact to something, but then it follows through and it actually happens. And you're like, okay, so now my ability to judge what to take seriously or not is tampered with. And so, it can be hard. It can be really hard.
So yeah, I'm practicing rest as resistance this year. That doesn't mean that transmission slows down. Don't get me wrong there. It's just more that I don't have any of social media on my phone. I carry a book with me everywhere. I read on the train.
Yeah.
I'm spending a lot of time with myself in very present and active, conscious ways that I used to do before MySpace, even before social media was everywhere.
God, do you remember Bebo?
Oh my God, Bebo.
Did you ever use Bebo?
I think so. Yeah, it was Bebo.
It was kind of like MySpace. Like you had like a So Bebo.
Bebo. Okay,
yeah.
Right now I'm spelling it.
It was
wrong.
like old school, like
2005 to 2013.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
I used that before. Like I started using Facebook. I never was really into MySpace, but I used Bebo, and it was a similar thing where you'd have like your favorite song on your homepage and like artists and stuff.
And you write your own scripts for how you want your
simpler times.
Yeah. How you want it to be presented.
Yes. Talking about going like off meta and everything. Like I've got the same plan for myself this year. It's a little harder because like I run my business through Meta.
Yes.
Which is
well, that's kind of how they get you, right? They get you dependent on their service so that you can't leave.
Because that's kind of where it is at, like that's how I've built up a clientele base and worked with other businesses that work alongside me and how they have built up their clientele base. And so this year is me managing how to slowly kind of step away from that. But because it's for the same reasons. Like I said, like when I'm at work, I'm working with people who are sometimes terminally ill, or otherwise just going through a health crisis. So it's a very heavy job in that role. I'm not just doing hair. Like it's all of these transferable skills. Yeah, it's all of my transferable skills that I learned when I was counselling. That's in this job as well. And then I'm also heavily involved in the trans community outside of that. So I'm always on the go. I'm always doing something. And so yes, I will be moving away from Meta because I do need to have time where I can decompress, where I'm not constantly being bombarded with these really stressful events. And it doesn't mean cutting myself off and completely just ignoring what's going on. For those who cannot see me right now, I am wearing my keffiyeh. I am pro-Palestinian. And, that's another, it's just one of those things. But right now, we're being bombarded with so many different world crises that we have to be able to take a breath.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're giving up. It means, this is also another thing too, we have to have community because we have to have people who can take the baton in this relay. So I think that's important.
And picking your battles and choosing to where you apply your energy consciously and cautiously.
Yeah.
And protecting yourself, because joy, our joy, trans joy, queer joy is the purpose of why we're fighting for the things that we're fighting for. We're fighting for our joy. So take moments of joy because that's the victory. That's the victory that we work towards.
Yeah.
There will always be a fight to be had. So yeah, conserve yourself, look after yourself.
Yeah.
And if you are a Worm Girls fan, they will be in studio next Tuesday morning on Tranzmission with Sean for April 1st. So if you want to hear an interview with Worm Girls, they'll be in next week. Thank you so much, and love hanging out with you, Haydi.
You too, darling.
And all the best to you out there, and we will be back next week with more sensational music and chats and fun, and yeah. Woo! See you later. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Transmission. See you next Tuesday, 9 to 10 a.m. on 4ZZZ.